The ultimate sacrifice. Linda British literally gave herself away. Linda was an outstanding teacher who felt that if she had the time, she would like to create great art and poetry. When she was 28, however, she began to get severe headaches. Her doctor discovered that she had an enormous brain tumor. They told her that her chances of surviving an operation were about 2%. Therefore, rather than operate immediately, they chose to wait for 6 months. She knew she had great artistry in her. So during those 6 months, she wrote and drew feverishly. All of her poetry, except one piece, was published in magazines. All of her art, except one piece, was shown and sold at some leading galleries. At the end of the 6 months, she had the operation. The night before the operation, she decided to literally give herself away. In case of her death, she wrote a will in which she donated all the parts of her body to those who needed them more than she would. Unfortunately, Linda's operation was fatal. Subsequently, her eyes went to an eye bank in Bethesda, Maryland, and from there to a recipient in South Carolina. A young man, age 28, went from darkness to sight. That young man was so profoundly grateful that he wrote to the eye bank thanking them for existing. It was only the second thank you that the eye bank had received after giving out in excess of 30,000 eyes. Furthermore, he said he wanted to thank the parents of the donor. They must have indeed been magnificent folks to have a child who would give away her eyes. He was given the name of the British family, and he decided to fly in to see them on Staten Island. He arrived unannounced and rang the doorbell. After hearing his introduction, Mrs. British reached out and embraced him. She said, "Young man, if you've got nowhere to go, my husband and I would love for you to spend the weekend with us." He stayed, and as he was looking around Linda's room, he saw that she'd read Plato. He read Plato in Braille. She'd read Hegel. He'd read Hegel in Braille. The next morning, Mrs. British was looking at him and said, "You know, I'm sure I've seen you somewhere before, but I don't know where." All of a sudden, she remembered. She ran upstairs and pulled out the last picture Linda had ever drawn. It was a portrait of her ideal man. The picture was virtually identical to this young man who had received Linda's eyes. Then her mother read the last poem Linda had written on her deathbed. It read, "Two hearts passing in the night, falling in love, never able to gain each other's sight."